Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show.
Welcome to another episode of the Social Jello with Angelo podcast. As you saw in the title, should we abolish all martial arts titles? Where is this coming from? Well, modern day spokesperson and now banner of all things martial arts, Joe Rogan, loves to go on his show and completely crap all over the title Sifu. If anybody says anything about Sifu, his first response is, "Your Sifu said that, huh?" Right? And he immediately ties the title Sifu to McDojo. And there's kind of a problem here because there are definitely a lot of martial arts styles out here. Particularly, this panel is a mixed panel. We have MMA coaches, we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches, we have people running multiple programs, martial arts programs. We have people who are running martial arts programs with people from 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and they're working together and collaborating with different schools in their area. The one thing we all share in common on this panel is that we all practice an art and teach an art called Kajikembo. Now, I wouldn't want to be on a one-on-one fight with anybody on this panel. Well, I mean, I would because I like a challenge, but that would be the only other reason I'd want to do that. If you don't know who these people are, you can check them out online. There's a lot of history behind every single person on this panel. I definitely recommend you do. But the real question is here, a lot of young folks don't like titles. They don't like the title Sifu. They don't like the and specifically for our style, we have things like Sigung and Grandmaster and Senior Grandmaster. This tends to turn off a lot of the younger generation of people who are joining martial arts now, listening to Joe Rogan, who particularly just want to do MMA as a combat sport, where there are no titles. Boxing, no titles. Kickboxing, no titles. Muay Thai kickboxing, there's titles. That's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other podcast. Some of you guys think there's no titles there. There are titles there too. But that to the side, put all that to the side. This conversation is about whether or not these titles are helping us grow or are holding us back. And that's what the topic of this podcast is. So before we get started, we are going to do a quick round and have everyone introduce themselves. Because if I do it, I'm going to mess it up. So we're going to start up with, let's start with Rick Kinji.
Okay, let's go titles.
No, just introduce yourself. Introduce yourself, and then we'll start with the titles. Then we'll jump into the topic.
Put them all together. Senior Grandmaster Rick Kinji.
All right, Carlos.
Professor Carlos de Valle, Gracie, Baja, Long Island.
Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby Seronio. Professor Bobby Seronio.
Oh, Professor Bob. All right. I'm Dan Tyrell, Middletown, California.
Claude.
Claude Lawson, American Kajikembo Association, BP, that title.
All right. Okay. So there it is. All right, now let's jump into the topic. We're going to try to keep this within an hour. I'll try. We'll see. And let's go ahead and start off this conversation with Bobby Seronio.
Seronio.
See, this is why we wanted to do.
I know my family's from Hawaii, but
hey, you said Bobby. I should have just stuck to what you told me. I said, "What do you want me to call it?" Bobby. Bobby. I should have just said Bobby. See, I already messed up. I told you I'd mess it up. I told you I would.
That's right. Get in line, bro. It's okay.
All right. So we'll start with Bobby. What's your ideas? What are your thoughts on this?
Like Uncle Rick Kinji said, on what? Abolishing titles? Is that what it is, brother?
Yeah, that's what it is. People are talking about people are talking about abolishing titles. That maybe titles is the reason that younger people are having a difficult, people from MMA and that kind of background having a hard time wrapping their heads around martial arts, traditional martial arts specifically. And that whole tie to Bullshido and the Kung Fu stuff.
Well, sometimes I really appreciate you, Angelo, and even John, because when I was younger, I was all about, why is this guy getting this title? Why are these guys getting this title? And when I was a green brown belt, there's guys who are white belts and now they're grandmasters. And now that I'm older, it doesn't stop me from doing who I am. My lineage is with my grandpa Seronio, obviously with the Ramos, and then Gaylord was my grandfather's student. So without the title, it really just doesn't mean nothing at the end of the day. What means something is how you train and how you perform. So abolishing titles, that's a tough one, right? Because it's been given to some of these guys by their seniors, But I think what we can do is set standards what qualifies you for what title. And qualifying doesn't necessarily mean that you get the title, right? It qualifies you, say, for grandmaster, so to speak. Being 60 years old, I think that qualifies you. You put a lot of time in on the mat, and then it goes to the board. But it's really it's really sometimes tough to abolish something that kind of means a lot to some people. For me, no, it doesn't mean a lot. I love showing up to seminars and just wearing a black belt. I love when I first started journeying, I love being a white belt in jiu-jitsu and stuff, so forth. But does it hurt? I think it hurts us sometimes, especially Kaji Kimbo, because it's all over the place sometimes. And before, when I was younger, like the early 90s, mid 90s, being a fifth degree was something. And I think Uncle Rick Kinji can really speak to that. It took a long time for somebody just to get a fifth degree, and then I think at the tail end when Sijo was at the end of his lifestyle, right? I think people started positioning themselves, but a couple of people that stuck really true was the Kenji Ohana, and a couple of people that I know, so does it hurt? Yes and no, right? And it depends on what we're going with it. For me, as an individual, it doesn't hurt me at all because it's not going to stop me from teaching, creating champions off and on the mat, and moving forward, in this MMA thing we've been doing for a very long time, so I hope that kind of answers that.
Yeah, we're gonna keep talking about it, but that's a good start.
Because I know we're gonna hurt some folks' feelings. I know that. I'm ready for that. But I'm trying to be nice about it, right? I'm a little bit older, so.
All right.
I mean, Uncle Rick knows me since 1990, since 1980. And now I'm 54, going to be 55. So he's known me, and he's my family. He's my senior, so.
So is there a floor mat? How are we supposed to jump in or not jump in?
No, so you're next. The format is you're next. That's the format.
So I know what they were talking about. So Joe Rogan, he says he don't believe in titles.
So it's not that Joe Rogan doesn't believe in titles. It's that anytime Joe Rogan starts to talk to a guest about martial arts and the person starts talking about a McDojo, his one-liner is always the same. Is that what your Sifu told you?
Okay.
Sifu told you that? And he specifically goes after the title of Sifu and the entire Kung Fu titles. And I don't even think he knows about Qigong or any of that other stuff, to be honest.
I mean, everybody involved in it was fighting for a title. I mean, that's I can't think of anything that doesn't have a title. I think of the military. Yeah, everything all has a title. I believe titles are important. I mean, they should be earned. Of course, there are a lot of people that have just. I got promoted to Grandmaster in 2002 by Imperator at the KSDI tournament. I didn't ask for it. They promoted two other guys, and Sijo said, "Hey, Kinji, you go. I'm promoting you too." I said, "Oh, that's okay. I don't have no money. I'm not going up there. No money. You just buy your own belt." So they gave me my certificate, everything in 2002. Then I got promoted to senior grandmaster, I think just 2 years ago. Yes. But I think it has their place at our school. We have Steve Bach, Sifu, Steve Goon, Professor, and Grandmaster. And they acknowledge, just for instance, I belong to the BOA. And we don't go around promoting people. People come to us and say, hey, we want to be recognized as an 8th degree or a 9th degree. And CJO asked us to put in a requirement. And so for 30 years, a person has to have 30 years in Kaji Kimbo, active years, and have a black belt under him to be professor title. And for a grandmaster, he should have 40 years in and have a black belt that has a black belt. It's unfortunate that there are people out there taking the titles and just running around with them. It's unfortunate that we have some legitimate Kaji Kempo today that are grandmasters that are going overseas and promoting people that they have never seen throw a punch or a kick. And that's screwing us around a whole lot. So, I mean, there's things that unfortunately Joe and Dichi did also that started off a lot of this stuff by people that were taking care of them. That people were martial artists in different styles, and they were just making grandmasters out of people. And they would show up in Las Vegas. One person, for instance, was Rich Messina. He's a good friend of mine. He's a Kempo guy, but he said he studied under Nick Seronio in some Kaji Kempo. Well, Joe promoted him because he brought him to New York and he helped Joe with his tournament. At that time, there was a lot of people that threatened the guy, told him they would whip his ass if he ever comes back again. Walking around saying that he was a grandmaster. And so I went on and said, hey, look, we can't do anything about it because Joe did this. Why don't we help make him a Kaji Kempo guy? So for the last 15 years, I've been teaching my lineage of Kaji Kempo. But, you know, I say I believe the title is there. It should be there. But it should be earned.
All right. Let's go to Carlos.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So,
and also, one thing I want to say real quick. So, Rick, are you retired? I can't remember. Were you in the military? I can't remember.
No.
Okay. So that's Claude. Claude and Carlos are both retired military. So I think it's interesting. Before you start talking,
not retired, but I was in. I am a veteran. I did 8 years in the
okay, not retired. You're not retired. You're not retired. He's not retired. He's not retired military. He's still military.
Who are you talking about? Me?
No, Carlos. Carlos.
No, I did 8 years active duty in the Marine Corps.
And then we got Claude coming from the Air Force. So I think that's an interesting context to have as we talk about titles. All right, Carlos.
Yeah, so the title thing. In the United States, titles are very important. I noticed that. If you walked into a doctor's office and you saw that there was no certificates or diplomas on the wall, you will feel kind of weird, right? And it's an interesting concept that one of my teachers brought up a long time ago. It's like, they're not important, but they are. Right? If you walked into your doctor's office and you didn't see a certificate up, a diploma up on the wall from Yale, Harvard, or whatever, stating, I have a PhD in so-and-so, you'll feel weird. But when you walk into a doctor's office, you see all these certifications, right? Newspaper articles, pictures. It's important, but it's not. All right? It's also what you do. Sometimes, like they say, the biggest thing that I always hear when I'm very competitive, leave it on the mats. All right. You can't fake the mats. Right. So sometimes that's your certification right there. Right. Like, for example, I got my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after 15 years this past December. And I didn't get a certificate. I didn't get a diploma. Anything. Can I order one? Sure can. But what makes my credibility is that everybody knows who I am when I go compete. They're like, oh, that's Joe Scarola's guy, And there's other guys that come up to me and they know, hey, oh, wow, Carlos. They call me Crazy Carlos because I'm, I go up against anyone. I really don't care. But they and that's the thing, So people take the title thing a little bit out of hand. Is it important? Yeah, it's important. You earned that. That's your title, right? That's like graduating from college, right? You earned this diploma. Well, you're not going to hang it up because somebody got offended for it. No, you earned it. Hang it up. You're a doctor now, right? Why can't we do the same thing with ours, right? Whether it be Kaji Kempo, whether it be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whatever. Now, in the same token, when we're talking about martial arts, there's martial arts that don't have any ranks. Go do Sambo. Sambo doesn't have ranks. You just beat the hell out of each other. And you get your recognition by competing. That's how you get your recognition. All right. You move up the ladder and people will see, oh, yeah. Oh, now, just like wrestling. Right. There's no real, you don't get a title for it. You just, you become a head coach, if you make it that far, whatever. College will hire you, Notre Dame or Yale or whatever. And that's your title now. You're the head coach. Why? You competed in the Olympics. You did Fargo. You did all these things. And that's how it goes. But people put too much emphasis on the title thing. And again, it's important and it's not.
All right. Dan.
Is it important? No. Is it important to some people? Yes. Is it important to me? Absolutely not. But if you want to be called professor or grandmaster or great grand poobah, I would call you whatever it is you want me to call you because, I'm a people pleaser deep down. At my school, we're coaches. We have, and it's the same kind of philosophy. Like there's no belt rank in boxing. There's no belt rank in wrestling. There is in judo, and that's kind of where those belts started, right? It used to be white, black, and nothing in between. And the problem I have, at least with titles, is that they're misused. One of the things that I look at, I love seeing videos where somebody gets on or somebody introduce themselves. I'm Sifu so-and-so. No, you ain't. That is not how you use that damn title. You are not Sifu so-and-so. Because Sifu is a relationship between two people. You're not my Sifu. So it's incorrect to use that title in that way. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, Joe said it's that way. And Joe said a lot of things. But like from a standpoint of cultural awareness, well, where does that title actually come from, right? Where does sensei come from? Are we respecting that culture by using it in that way? Absolutely not. So people are here in the United States. I'm here in the United States. People walk through the door. Oh, should we bow and call you sensei? No, because that's not what I use. I'm coach. You can call me Dan. In fact, if you go way back, even in Kajikembo, so my instructor was Alan Reyes. His instructor was his dad, Aleju Reyes. They called him Al. That was everybody called him Al. And then there was a point where Joe showed up and said, well, no, you're now Master Reyes. Okay, but it was like you were chief, right? There was chief instructor. That was the title. And then you were master instructor. And then later, but Joe was always professor. When I grew up, and Grandmaster Kinji can attest to this, right? It was Professor Imperato.
Or professor, yeah.
Yeah, he was professor's coming to town. It wasn't Joe. And then something switched, right? And then it's Joe. But then it was professor, and everybody underneath him was associate professor. So all these associate professors, and then that kind of like associate professor was like, back here somewhere. And now we have 500 grandmasters or whatever it is. Not blaming the BOA. You guys hold it together. Anyway, that's my two.
And then something I need to clarify for context for anyone who is putting up with a Kajikembo conversation that doesn't do Kajikembo. So they keep mentioning the title Seijo. That's the founder of the style of Kajikembo. Alfie, if you don't know what Kajikembo is, I should have said this first. That's why I wanted John here, but John's busy. At the end of this episode, there is a What is Kajikembo podcast where I talk to UFC coach John Hackelman, who's also a Kajikembo black belt, who founded his own art called Hawaiian Kempo.
Dan is right. In 1962, when I started Kajikembo, my instructor, who now is called Great Grandmaster Carlos Bunda, I called him Carlos. His teacher was John Leone. I called him John Leone. I think it was in maybe 81 or 82 where somebody said, "Yo, you're supposed to be called Sifu or Sigu." And I had no idea what the hell that was. I got the title of Sifu, and I was at Ralph's Market, who actually was Boys Market one day. And I was sitting in there, and I was shopping, and I heard somebody say, "Sifu to the section, Sifu section." And I'm looking around there, they're talking about me, but they were asking somebody come over to the seafood section. I thought they were talking about me. But we didn't call, everybody was called by first name, or they had Carlos, his name was Peanut. James E. Brown, we called him Cuba, But as time went by, as he said, somebody came in and said, "Hey, you should be called Sifu." I was under the impression that Sifu meant teacher. Sigun was supposed to be teacher's teacher. Then, of course, professor, grandmaster, great grandmaster. And like you said, those titles are whatever. But the titles have grown into us now. And it's kind of hard to get us out. And they actually, like I say, they do have meaning for some of us. And my teacher is called a great grandmaster. And the reason he's called that, he personally has 5 grandmasters that he took from white belt to black belt that are grandmasters. I'm a senior grandmaster. I've been with my teacher since 1962, and we're still together today. 60 years later, we're still together. I have 4 grandmasters that I took from white belt to black belt. I have 7 professors that I took from white belt to black belt. Okay. It has its place, but if people don't want to recognize it, I have no problem with that, because I am what I am when I walk on the floor. Bottom line. That's it right there.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm now, right? But I can still throw some good punches and good kicks.
Absolutely.
Whether I'm Sifu or Grandmaster or just Rick.
So
Absolutely.
one thing I need to mention for the history, I'm going to remind myself and put a note here to tie in a conversation I had with Mitch Powell about the history of Kajukenbo and titles. I don't want to go there today because that takes too long. So I already did it. I already did that work. So we don't have to do that today. History of Kajukenbo and titles. So please click on the link for that here, or maybe I already put it in the beginning. It's been there lurking the whole time. So so you can take a look at that if you want to know more about how that switch he's talking about from chief instructor to professor to grandmaster, all these titles came in. Suddenly, I had a conversation with KSTI historian Mitch Powell about that. He has documentation for that. You can see that there. Now, Claude, your thoughts?
I got to come at the end of all that.
You got it,
Pretty much it's all
Claude.
been said. I don't have a problem with the titles either way. Most times, with I'm my instructor or with the rest of the people in the organization, it's Claude, or they call me whatever they want. I'll delve into this portion of it. I think the issue, martial arts wide throughout the world, issues with titles is that they can point to too many people that have earned titles and or rank who can't step on the floor and teach to save their lives,
Yep.
or who never could fight. And I'm not saying that you have to be a fighter to be considered a martial artist or master, grandmaster, whatever title you have out there. But I should be able to see, or anybody else should be able to see your expertise somewhere. Okay? There should be some kind of proof. And like Carlos mentioned, titles are important and they're not important at the same time. But they're important when there's some type of foundation behind it. They're unimportant when you're seeing somebody who couldn't teach you how to fold a napkin. Okay? So what are we really asking here? Are we asking, should there be something come around for everybody to get a hold of, and as a group or as a community get together and say, let's stop doing this. Let's stop promoting people that couldn't hold water in a fight and or teach on a mat. I mean, what do we actually saying that we have a problem with? Is it the title or the actions behind some people getting promoted who don't deserve it?
Same question for 3
I
decades.
think that may be the real conversation. Was that?
I said it's the same question for almost 3 decades, right? But I think Miss Uncle Kenji and them guys, they've been trying to do a great job on trying to patch along that. I haven't seen that many promotions foregoing as much as the late 90s, early 2000s, but at the end of the day, even like Claude and the rest of you guys say, it's what we do on the mat. And if we're unable to do it, we have to have students, because students are an extension of who you are, right? You don't see me jumping in no Bellator, PFL. No, I got my son. He do that. I teach him how to do that. I'm a little bit too old for that crap. And insurance don't cover all this teeth, right? So getting punched, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, it's your legacy too, right? I think everybody on this panel has a great idea of where we're going and what it should be, right? And the right questions. But I think everyone's been kind of as of late, been doing a good job and calming down all these titles and not looking like a Red Sea when you go to a seminar, right?
And my comment wasn't Kajukenbo specific. This is
Oh
across
yeah, it's all arts,
martial,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
all martial arts. I see it across everywhere, and I
Yeah,
think that's what
absolutely.
people have to ask the question with. Yeah.
Yeah.
You go to if you go to Dave Tyrell, he's one of Cesar Gracie's black belts, and we train with him a lot. No belts.
Oh, Dan Tyrell.
Yeah, Dave
Tyrell.
Tyrell.
Dave, that's my guy.
Yeah, that's my brother, man. Like without
Yeah.
him, we wouldn't be where we're at today with the MMA, you know. But you go into his gym, you got 50, 60 people on the floor rolling, and you don't know who's a black belt.
Yep.
You bow, let's get going, right?
Let's get
Let's
busy.
get
Yeah,
going.
baby. Yeah.
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 You know, it's like Uncle Kenji said, or you guys just said, this is what we do on the mat. And if we can't do it, we have extensions of people who we have taught that can do that, and you can explain and break it down. Because your body may get old, but your eyes don't get too old. You can see a lot of things,
Right.
right? So
And
I think we're heading in the right direction.
and I think that's the discussion, like Claude was mentioning. It's about what's happening. Like, and again, for anybody who's putting up with this conversation with Kaju Kembo guys, I really do encourage you to go check out what Kaju Kembo is and the kind of fighters that come out from the kind of people that do what we do. But this conversation is being had outside of the Kaju Kembo community. This is happening thanks to the internet. This is happening everywhere. This is happening in all those other arts. And I know this is going to sound biased, and I'm going to say it. I believe that we're, as Kaju Kempo guys, we are very, very different from a Taekwondo guy or from another karate guy or from a judo guy. We're very different from these guys. There's nothing against those styles. It's just the way we practice and what we apply it to. It just comes out to be very different from that. And as Kaju Kempo guys, as a Kaju Kempo guy myself, I'm always trying to distinguish myself away from those things because I'm not Taekwondo, right? I'm not Taekwondo. I teach in Japan, and one of my biggest hurdles is getting the Japanese guys to understand I'm not teaching karate. Yeah, karate's in there, but I know what you guys call karate, and it's not what I'm doing. And any Japanese karate guy will come in and say that I see some things that look like what we do. I also see some things that look like nothing. They look nothing like what we do. So as Kaju Kembo guys, we're making a distinguish. And in this situation, we're talking about how it looks like on the mat, but with the title thing, that's a cultural thing, right? So like, I'm in Japan. I've never had anybody call me Sifu. They see the title, they see it on the wall, and they all this is Japanese. We're speaking Japanese. I'm not speaking any English in my classes. I'll speak a little bit of English, and I'll immediately translate to Japanese just so I can, because my Japanese level isn't as high as I'd like it to be. That's about it. And they all call me sensei, not because I told them to call me sensei. I've never told anybody to call me sensei in my life. That's just what they call teacher in Japan. So it's a cultural thing. And then I told them, okay, in Kaju Kempo, they have these titles, and I have to like educate them, which segues us to our next question. How do you teach this concept to your students about the titles? How do you segue? How do you do that? I'm just going to let you answer that question. How do you teach when a student comes to you? How do you teach about the titles when you have the titles, whether you use them or not? When they ask you that question on your certificate, it says, mine particularly says Sifu, it says Sifu Angelo Ferrer. What's Sifu mean? What's that? How do you, and I was online and I noticed there's like grandmasters and Siga and what's all this stuff. When a student starts asking you all these questions, how do you contextualize that? How do you teach them about that? This question, we'll go in the same format that we did last time. We'll go in the same order because Kinji was asking me, what's the format here? So I'm going to put a format together for you, man. We're going to start with Bobby, and then we're going to go to Kinji, we're going to Carlos, then we're going to Dan, we're going to Claude. We're going to go in the same order that we did. I'm doing a star pattern. All right. So Bobby, how do you teach that?
I don't. It's about the journey. I've been teaching for over a couple of decades now. No one's ever asked that. We have our school rank, and then we have our competition rank. Depending, if they're getting better at jiu-jitsu tournaments or karate tournaments, and eventually it goes into kickboxing and so forth. But I've never had nobody question these ranks. It's almost like jiu-jitsu, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, my jiu-jitsu brothers, they have a great journey, right? I've seen white belts be a white belt for 10 years, right? But they're tapping out brown, right? And they're not worried about the belt. They're worried about the journey. And that's kind of how I teach it in my school. It's when they get belt or a stripe to make them smile, then so be it. I think it's meant to keep a lot of kids in the school, right? Because they like to be awarded things, and it puts a smile on them. Because at the end of the day, it's the kids who make a lot of us our schools possible because if you're teaching at a GVRD like a rec center, that's one thing. But if you have a $7,000 lease, it's a different thing, right? And it's a fine line becoming a muck dojo, right? So the best thing I can be is generally teaching them from my heart and tell them about it's the journey, right, of what we do and recognize who needs a little bit more help, who can advance or who I can push. But as far as explaining what the titles are, that's no here or there, to be honest with you, in my school. They love the journey. They love coming up. They love challenging themselves. They love sweating, even bleeding sometimes, and then hugging each other and giving everybody love at the end of every class. So yeah, I haven't ran into that issue or even addressed that issue as far as explaining that type of writing.
All right. So following the same order, next up is Kinji.
So, agree with what he said. Not only that, I'm old school. I'm back from 1962. Had my school for 3 years. I've been fortunate enough to have students that stayed with me for a long time, periods of time. So I've had white belts. And in the way we line up, white, the higher belt is to the right, the lower belts are below. And one of the ways we teach them to respect rank is when we line up and I see somebody that's sitting up with the purple belts and he's a yellow belt, I look at the other purple belts and I say, what is he doing up here with you guys? And I make them jump on them and kick them out and throw them back where they're supposed to be.
Yes.
But make them learn how to appreciate rank. When we have black belts, I might have 20 black belts or 30 black belts at a black belt test. And we line up the same way, the highest to the right, down to the left. So everybody understands why they're doing that and what rank means to us. They can't call you Rick. They can't call you Robert. They got to call you Sifu, Grandmaster, Seabach. They understand the rank as they're coming up. We have our kickboxing, our jiu-jitsu classes, and we have our kajukenbo. Everybody's kajukenbo in our school. Everybody's kajukenbo, and they come up through kajukenbo through the belt testing. They also compete in kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, and that's a whole different thing there. But still considered a yellow belt, purple belt, blue belt, green belt in kajukenbo. There is no ranking in the kickboxing and the boxing classes, the striking classes, and the jiu-jitsu classes. So they learn rank from day one all the way up to the day that they, I've had black belts that when I'm ready to promote them to second and third degree, they come to me and say, hey, what am I going to have to do for my test? I tell them, I don't know yet. I know what you're supposed to know, and you're going to be doing some of that. I got no idea. I can't even imagine them asking me what I have to do for my second degree and my third degree. I just tell them, I don't know yet. I'll tell you that day of the test. But they learn to take rank. What I appreciate, too, is I appreciate all the guys on these panels because they're actually taking kajukenbo up to where it's supposed to be. If we thought about kajukenbo back in the 1940s and we stayed the same, we'd be an obsolete style of martial arts. But these guys, along with my son Robert, Bobby, these guys have took kajukenbo to the level where it's supposed to be. More kickboxing, more boxing, more jiu-jitsu, and this is what I'm thankful for all you guys that are on this panel for helping kajukenbo grow. And especially to my son Robert. He's took over the school now for the last 13 years, I think. And he's done a lot. Though I holler at him, scream at him, and I scream at the students. He goes, hey, we're not doing that, Dad. I said, oh, yeah, you are. You can't stop doing that, But we keep the title and the rank, and we make the kids from day one all the way up to they get their black belt to understand title and appreciate the rank. I'd never allow any student at our school, if he's not a black belt, they cannot wear a black shirt to class. I mean, I'm talking about dressed in a black shirt before they change to their red shirt. They cannot come into the school with a black shirt on. If they do, we make them drop, do push-ups in the hallway, in the front, the check-in room. If I see them outside, they're dropping. And I want them to appreciate it. I tell them, they say, why are you so hard about the black T-shirts? I said, if you understand what everybody had to go through to get one of those black shirts, you'd understand why I'm like that. So that's part of teaching them about rank and respect for me.
All right. Next up is Carlos.
All right. So with the ranks and titles and all that, especially with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's more about structure. right? Structure and giving them a leader, right? Especially with the adults, it's a little more lenient. You know, we bow, and now the big thing is, why do we have to bow? Angelo, you probably heard that all around the place. You know, why do we have to bow? Why do we have to wear
Well,
the same uniform? It's uniformity.
I'm gonna interrupt you. In Japan, I don't have to worry about telling anybody about bowing.
Exactly. But
Lucky
you know what I'm
man.
talking about. It's like the new thing. Like everybody in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world now is, why do we have to uh basically, why do we have to have respect in the dojo? That's like what's going on right now. It's like, it's a martial art. It comes with the turf. You know, like, why do we have to bow? Well, we're honoring a system that's basically started in Japan. It takes 2 seconds. Why are you complaining about 2 seconds of your life? Um, and then the structure, right? Especially for the kids, they need a leader. They need a leader. So by them calling you professor or coach, they're following a format, right? Just like in the military, right? You don't just go up to somebody hey, well, in the Air Force they do. I'm messing with Claude over there. They and it's and well, I'll tell you a little story. Because I was in the Marines, I was stationed in Cuba, and we had a detail, a Marine detail that was supposed to report to technical sergeant or staff sergeant or something. Like, it was like the equivalent of a sergeant in the Marine Corps. We go and we're all squared away. The staff sergeant reporting for duty, and this guy's from the Air Force, and he goes, "Why are you calling me staff sergeant? Call me Bob." And I'm like, we're looking at each other like, we're lost, because that's not what we do in the Marine Corps. We're like, we're calling you by your rank. You know, like, like in the Army, for example, they call everybody that's a sergeant and above, no matter if you're a staff sergeant, a gunnery sergeant, or whatever, the ranks first sergeant, they call them sergeant. And that doesn't fly in the Marine Corps. If you're a staff sergeant, you're a staff sergeant. If you're a gunnery sergeant, you're a gunnery sergeant. You might earn the right to have somebody call you gunny. You know, you're a first sergeant, you're a first sergeant, but nobody's gonna call you sergeant when you're a E7. So those things are confusing. But and back to the dojo, especially for the kids, they need structure. They need structure. They need to have a leader. They need to call you professor and stuff like that. And I explain to the parents and the kids, one day you're gonna have a job interview. You're going to have to interview to go to college. You're going to meet your future in-laws. And you're going to have a level of respect when you meet these people. So I'm trying to teach that to you here right now. You know, when I ask you a question, when I tell you, hey, does everybody understand the technique? Not yeah. Yes, sir. Answer correctly. Because that's going to affect them in the future. So people don't see that. And when I explain it to them, they're like, oh, he makes sense. This guy makes sense. I'm setting you up for the future. So it might bother a lot of people. You know, people get bothered with, when things are structured. But then I'm like, don't you have structure in your house? Right? Your kids have to go to sleep at a certain time. They have to wake up at a certain time. The room has to be made, right? The bed has to be made. There's things that have to happen a certain way. So I try to link the martial arts world to the regular lifestyle, and it starts to the gears start moving in people's heads. They be like, oh, this makes sense. You know, like, how are you gonna go to Grandmaster Kinji's school and just be like, oh, Rick, no, that's not, no, are you kidding me? Like, get this
Right.
man the respect. He's been doing this 60 years. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely.
Like, give the man the respect he deserves. And kids nowadays, they need to learn that, because you've seen kids nowadays, they're bananas.
They're wilding out.
Yeah, yeah. And
I was
they need
about to
some
say,
structure.
when you were talking about the house and some people go to bed at a certain time. I'm an English teacher by trade, so I deal with a lot of kids, and I would say that there's a lot of kids out there. Me and kids were talking about that last time in our podcast, man, about the kids and how you're teaching parents to be parents. so,
Yeah, it's crazy.
so,
It's
so
crazy.
there's an
Yeah,
assumption being made here about, oh, they go to bed at a certain time. Well, you'd hope. You'd
yeah,
hope they
yeah.
are.
Yeah. So at the same time, they don't get it, and then people complain. You guys see it online now. Oh, that what do we have to bow? What do we have to wear? What does everybody have to wear? The uniform, right? And it's like I told Angelo last time, right? When you see a professional baseball team, like let's say the New York Yankees, they don't wear what they want. They wear the team uniform. You know that you're watching the New York Yankees and you're representing that team. You look professional, right? When you see a Navy versus Army game, you see the cadets. They look sharp, right? I want to look sharp. When I go to a Kaju Campbell school, I want to see everybody look sharp, you know? And it's, it's structure. People have a problem with it, but especially for the kids, the structure. And that's what I want to like make them into good adults, respectful adults.
Dan?
That's good.
So I think we're looking at kids versus adults, and we deal with each one different. You're not going to teach kids the way you teach adults. And I think that's
Right.
where maybe Joe Rogan's talking about the McDojo. Because if you have that form, I mean, kids, they need structure. They thrive in structure, right? They need a little bit. They create their own structure. I mean, anybody familiar with the novel, the book, Lord of the Flies, right? Ever seen the movie, right? They create their own hierarchy because there's an absence of hierarchy. And it's just natural for them to do that. Where we get into trouble, and I think I'm not familiar with the podcast, Joe Rogan puts out. I'm familiar with who he is, but I haven't heard, his philosophy on the use of the title Sifu. But this is my personal philosophy: is like with kids, we need structure, because kids do better with it. It also helps to sell the things that martial arts helps with: confidence and self-discipline, focus, that sort of thing. We want to see the kids stand correctly and answer. But where we have to look out is if we're doing these hierarchical structures, creating ranks and titles, and lifting these up onto pedestals just to cater to our own personal egos. And that's a big cliff that a lot of instructors are really happy to jump off of, just to make sure that, man, I am the most important person on the planet, and you will all bow to me. And I've seen it. I was a part of that. I was a part of that structure. I was a part of that culture. And getting out was very much like getting out of a cult, and so I think one of the biggest things that I would caution against, because those ranks and titles create ego. They cater to our ego, and ego is the enemy of progress. It is 100%. So if you're starting to like really get attached to these titles and attached to these ranks, you're really getting attached to that ego. And that ego is driving your choices. And unfortunately, it's at the detriment of not just your own personal progress, but your students' progress as well. And I have a feeling that's probably where Rogan's coming from, with the Sifu title and that being a bad thing. Anyways, there's mine.
All right, Claude?
So many good things.
Back to Claude.
On you, Claude.
Give it there. And I'm like, now you go. I'll start with this, my own personal journey. I spent 11 and a half years as a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Started in Texas, moved to California, went to Cesar Gracie's, and then I started training with Dave Tyrell. And in the military, I moved around every 3-4 years, so I'm always gone, always gone. When it comes to titles, I don't really talk about them up front, because the focus should be on the training. And Danny's right when it comes to you're just pumping up your own ego. The thing is, when you go back to the original portion of it, when you're teaching, if you're gonna have the titles and carry on the traditions, you have to start talking about the importance and how unimportant they are at the same time. If you're gonna add base to it or give it so much merit, you have to also balance that with humble yourself. I think what has happened, possibly you guys may disagree with me, is that those things aren't being taught. The traditions are being carried on without there being any foundation behind it and understanding when it comes to your students, depending on if you're talking to your kids or you're talking to your adults. And maybe something in the translation has been lost because maybe some people did get ahead and just focus on what the rank was and the title of it was only. And that's what they're passing on. Um, I'll end this with a quick story, military wise. Me and another first sergeant who were pretty much were the same. We were the same ranks. We were both E8s, and some documentation came across our desk with a person who was an E9 who necessarily wasn't uh, meeting standards by paperwork. And his first reaction, because he made that high rank very, very fast, because he knew some people. I'm not saying he didn't deserve his rank, the other E8, but he had progressed so fast because he studied, because he was good at certain things and knew certain people. His father was also a retired 06 or colonel or what have you. He had certain privileges that maybe other people did not that helped him along the way within the ranks. Again, not saying he didn't deserve the rank, but his mindset on it, because things came a little bit easier to him, was a bit different. He wanted to fry that chief, that E9. He wanted to just set him out to pasture. Come to find out, the chief was going through a divorce. He was losing his kids. He had other things going on, that he was trying to deal with. So he missed the whole humanistic portion of it and the whole portion of teaching and being a leader and a member at the same time. You have to also not only lead, but be a part of. And he thought himself so far above that if he's not meeting what he felt were certain standards, then the person didn't deserve to be where they were. So bringing that back to the martial arts, those things have to be taught. What is this? What does this mean? What is the importance of your title or rank or what have you? But at the same time, are we still putting in the? You need to be humble. You need to be that forever student, out there with everyone else while you're teaching, while you're learning. Because for me, as I'm getting older, I'm in my mid 50s now. I don't look for my seniors to be on the mat all the time banging. I look for them to give me knowledge and wisdom and vision from their past going forward. So then I can take that and not duplicate what they did, but take it to the next level, keep push past that and beyond that. But we got to have some measure of discipline within ourselves to do that. And following the traditional line, you have got to teach what it is to be that teacher because you have the experience. And maybe that's something that's lacking. Maybe that was a long soliloquy to nothing. I don't know.
Well, that's why you go last. That's a great answer.
That was good, brother. That was good.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, we are to our wrap up. I want to give a big thanks to. I'm going to remind you that I did fight. I did fight in the cage quite a bit and got hit in the head quite a bit. So if I fuck this up, sorry. SGM Rick Kinji, Professor Carlos de la Valle, Bobby. I forgot. Dan Tyrell and Claude Lawson. Thank you, all of you, for coming out and sharing your thoughts on this topic. Now I turn to you, the listener. If you've been watching this and you kept up with this conversation this whole time, I'm assuming you're Kaji Kembo. And even if you're not, maybe you're from another art. What's going on with your art? What's going on? What do you think? Do you think taking titles out would help or hurt your art? Go in the comments. Go ahead and talk to each other. Trying to destroy each other if you can in the comments. Please be nice. Play nice. Play nice. Bobby?
Hey, real quick, man. Great seeing you, Dan. Always, Angelo. Thank you. Uncle Rick. Always great seeing you. I love you, man. Claude and Carlos, man, thank you for your service, man, and protecting us. Great seeing you guys on here. Claude, I know we friends on Facebook. Carlos, I just went ahead and added you, man. God bless you guys.
Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up.
Yeah.
Find me. Everybody find me.
Absolutely.
And that'll be my next thing. Real quick, if we can do this, if we can do this in 3 minutes, the students waiting for me on the mats right now to go coach them will be very appreciative. If not, it's okay, but they'll have to wait a little longer. It's a free session anyway. I'm sure there's a purple belt in there in jiu-jitsu. I'm sure he'll make sure no one gets hurt. But but if you can, Where can people find you? Start in the same format, starting with Bobby. Where can they find you, Bobby?
You can't. I'm a ninja. I'm a ninja, man. I'm all over. I'm all over. Right? Yeah, I'm on IG, Team Seronio. I'm Seronio on Facebook, but not. You'll see my son-in-law and all my kids, man. Just a blessed journey, and that's it, man. Thank you, guys.
All right. SGM Rick Kinji, where can people find you?
Inglewood.
Yeah, man.
All right. All right.
Kinji's got the cover.
Kinji's Kajukembo in Inglewood. Google it, you will see it.
Whoop whoop.
Carlos, where can they find you, man?
All right, I'm in Long Island, New York, Gracie Barra, Long Island, New York. You could go find me on Facebook. Just look for my name. Make sure it's spelled right because you will not find me. And I'm also, yeah, my last name always gets butchered. But if you spell it right, I will pop up. There's a picture of me and my son with the Gracie Barra logo behind. And my pages are all martial arts. I'm either doing Kajukembo, Kyokushin, Sambo, Judo. You know, Angelo, I'm all over the place. I'm doing everything. FMA. I'm jumping off some building. I'm doing something crazy. But you'll find me. Same thing on Instagram. On Instagram, same name.
Hey, I'm gonna be in Island next month. I'll definitely go come look you up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'll go down there to Rich Facina. So I'll definitely look you up when I come down there.
Yes, sir.
Dan, where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Senior Great Grand Poobah, Dan
Is it
Tyrell.
frozen?
But you can find me there. I'm usually pretty busy, but if you send me a message, I'll try to hit you back up ASAP as soon as I can.
Claude, where can they find you? Are you hiding?
I love Danny. There's a Kajukembo Association. You can find me on Facebook. You type in my name, Claude Lawson. I'll come up. Me and my father will come up, but hopefully I look a little bit different than he does. Grandmaster Kinji, great seeing you on here, sir. I was at your school back when I was a brown belt years ago. Back when Grandmaster Strutter, it was a third degree.
Okay. Some years ago.
Yeah.
So ways back.
Yeah, I just want to say before you close up, like I said earlier, I thank you guys for helping Kajukembo become what it is today by expanding all the little pieces into the boxing, the jiu-jitsu, you know. So I really do appreciate you guys. The young guys are out there. Bobby, Matt, Jeff McElroy back over there, my son Robert, all you guys on this panel. So thank you guys for making Kajukembo what it is today.
It's an honor, sir.
Yes, it is.
Thank you for laying the foundation to help us do what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and finally, while we're saying all the thank yous, thank you for watching Social Jello with Angelo podcast. One of these once a week about martial arts and more. Catch y'all next time.
Have a corona on me, y'all.
Oh, there it is.
God bless, guys.
Hey, Grandma.